And obviously the major player of it all was Joel Embiid, who dropped 70 against the San Antonio Spurs. Joel Embiid, if we can look at a stat line just to see how just silly this is. 70 points. 20 of 4, 41 for the field, 1 for 2 from 3. By the way, chipped in 18 rebounds. I believe I saw it was the first 70-point, 15-rebound game in NBA history. So from that component, from a history standpoint, it's the first 70-point game in the history of the 76ers, and we know the all-time greats have played there. AI, Dr. J, Moses Malone, some all-time greats in the city of Philadelphia, and Joel Embiid is unquestionably one of them. He's a league MVP, may win it again this year, who knows? And I don't care. Couldn't care less. Now, Bryce, you're like, oh, what does that mean? I don't care, just to be clear, is not the same as it's not impressive. If a guy I remember there was a guy years ago for the Cincinnati Reds, guy by the name of Scooter Gennett. That name probably doesn't ring a bell because I came up with that. I remembered it just today. Scooter Gennett one time hit 4 home runs in a game. No, I mean, this is probably the first time you've heard about it. If you're watching the show, this is probably the first time you've heard about it since then. Now, Scooter Gennett is not Joel Embiid. Maybe a more apt example will be Mike Trout and some of the great statistical performances he's put together. They're kind of irrelevant. Not because Trout's irrelevant, not because Embiid's irrelevant, but because we'll see you do it in the playoffs. For the record, this was my take on Jokic. Jokic, then and now, because he's in the prime of his career, right in the middle of his prime, was and is putting together crazy statistical performances. I remember there was a stretch, the stretch that he hit the half-court game winner on my Warriors. It was like a 3-game stretch where he shot like 80-something% from the field in those 3 games combined. It was like video games. It's like 2K on rookie mode numbers. Crazy stuff. Wouldn't have cared last year because he hadn't shown anything near it in the postseason. Joel Embiid is the only NBA superstar that I can remember where, oddly, we really don't hold his playoff history against him that much. We don't. And some could say, well, we really didn't against Jokic when he got those 2 MVPs. But ask yourself last year, when we were talking about, hey, who could win the Western Conference? Denver was mentioned. They were the 1 seed. We were talking Lakers, Warriors were the defending champions. We were talking about the Suns, who had KD, Chris Paul, and Devin Booker and all those guys, and Ayton at the time. We're talking about all these teams way more than Denver. Way more. By the way, Michael Malone, remember when Michael Malone in that press conference when he was just constantly going at the Lakers and even at the parade when Denver won it, like, man, give us our respect. To which I said on the show, we will now because you won now. It's that simple. When you've shown an inability to get over the hump, when your superstar has kind of come up small in some of these playoff series, we're going to hold you to a different standard. For the record, Joel Embiid led the league in scoring a year ago. His playoff average dropped 9 points in the postseason. And if we can look at what Philadelphia did, what Joel Embiid did with the Philadelphia 76ers, we will put it on James Harden. Yes, James Harden is the worst playoff performer among stars or superstars in NBA history. James Harden's playoff history is far worse than Embiid's. It's worse than just about everybody ever. We understand that. But he gave you 2 masterpieces. I think he had a 40-point game in Game 1 and in Game 4. He was the best. Embiid didn't play Game 1. That was in Boston. Harden led the Sixers to a game that they stole against the Celtics. Game 4, season on the line. Harden was better than Embiid. Statistically, hit the game-winning shot. They go on the road to Boston. They win Game 5. They come back home for Game 6 where everybody expects them to win. Harden plays poorly, sure, but you know who else plays poorly up until like the last 6 minutes? Jason Tatum was nothing short of awful. He had made, I'm dead serious, 1 shot until about the last 6 minutes of that basketball game. What did Joel Embiid do? A chance to go to the conference finals on the line? 26 points, 10 rebounds. Solid, but disappeared in the last 6 minutes. And didn't that feel like it was kind of it for Game 7? Didn't kind of feel like, okay, Boston's going to win Game 7, and they won by almost 30. And Joel Embiid in that basketball game had 15 points and 8 rebounds in 38 minutes. Year prior, lost to a less talented Miami Heat team. Year prior, yes, you had the Ben Simmons stuff and Doc Rivers, so I'll take a little bit of the blame off of Embiid there. But as a guy who was the front runner for league MVP early in the season, they lost to a team whose second best player in that series was Kevin Huerter and the Atlanta Hawks. And by the way, in that Game 7, Trae Young had an abysmal shooting performance. 2020 lost to Boston, but didn't have Simmons. The coach wasn't right. Fine. 2019, lost to Toronto. Remember that shot Kawhi hit? Embiid, you remember a big play from Embiid in that game? 2018 got gentlemen swept by Boston. Like we talk about. By the way, we didn't talk about Jokic's playoff history as much as I thought we should have coming into last year's postseason, but it was a story. And by the way, it's the implicit disregard of Denver going the postseason was very apparent. Go back to my show. Mine was more intentional than most, but in talking about the contenders in the West. But we were talking Warriors. We were talking Lakers. Some people, not myself, were talking Grizzlies. We were talking Phoenix Suns. People talked about Denver, but not as, oh yeah, they're definitely going to make the Western Conference Finals. Never. And then what did Jokic do? He puts together one of the greatest playoff runs statistically we've ever seen in our lives. And won Finals MVP and was by a country mile the best player on the floor. Now we give Jokic his respect. Now we give the Nuggets their respect. You want to prove us wrong? Go win in the playoffs. Max Kellerman has a great saying. I heard him say all the time back when he was on First Take back in the day that the beauty about sports, players write their own scripts. These aren't actors. These aren't entertainers. They write, singers write their own songs, overwhelmingly so, but like that, players write their own scripts. They dictate the outcome of games, along with the coaches as well. But it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. When LeBron had won a title, we crushed LeBron. Steph already had a title, had 3 of them. We crushed Steph until he got a Finals MVP. Oh my gosh, Steph's terrible because he didn't have a Finals MVP. Folks, Embiid hasn't been to a conference finals. And we kind of just let it skate by. I'm not saying we should crush him after a 70-point game. There's nothing to crush. I don't listen. People saying, oh, it's San Antonio. I don't care. He scored 70. That's incredible. Are we going to be talking about if the Sixers go out in round 2 to Boston, Milwaukee, or Miami, or maybe even New York? We're going to be talking this offseason, July. Yeah, remember that 70-point game, that random January game against the Spurs that Embiid had? Nope, we're going to be like, yeah, they probably won another MVP in that span and disappeared to the playoffs again. I mean, the Sixers are kind of like the Cowboys of the NBA. Like, Cowboys can't get to a conference championship game. Sixers can't get to a conference finals. Haven't made one in 2 decades. Despite some really talented teams in that span, kind of like Dallas. So, this isn't to poo-poo. This isn't to... Me saying I don't care is not, it wasn't impressive. He dropped 70 and 18. It was unbelievable. And who knows? If he'd have played 48 minutes... he definitely would have passed Kobe's 81. Who knows if he could have threatened Wilt? He could have made it interesting. He's an all-time great. Joel Embiid's already an all-time great. He's already going to the Hall of Fame. He's got an MVP. But this whole notion that we just totally disregard his playoff history, it's odd to me. It's really, really odd. Maybe if he wins an MVP this year and the Sixers flame out and he's the main cause of it, or not the main cause of it, but a big cause of it, maybe we'll go into 2025 if he's in the MVP discussion again, take an MVP from him, give it to Jokic or Giannis or somebody, and hold his playoff history against him, I guess. But we don't do with Embiid what we do with other superstars, what we did with LeBron, what we did with Steph, despite the fact that Steph had won multiple MVPs and multiple championships, what we did and still do to Kevin Durant. Hey, KD, go and win as the man. Why don't we do this with Joel? Like, it's a very odd thing. I'm not saying Embiid is a playoff choker like James Harden or somebody, but is he a playoff underachiever? That's not even debatable. I don't know. Player of his caliber, I believe Embiid's the only MVP in the history of the league to have not made a conference finals. Now, you know what the beauty is? He could make me look like an idiot in May, make one, even go a step further, make the finals, and I got to eat my words. Just like Jokic did. Now, I had less faith in Jokic than I do in Embiid, but now I have all the faith in the world in Jokic because he proved me wrong. Proved a lot of people wrong. I don't know. I feel like I'm on an island on this Embiid thing. I'm not saying he's not great. I'm not saying he's not one of the 5 best players on God's green earth. I'm not saying that Team USA is very lucky to have him for the Olympics. Very excited about that, but we got to be consistent on how we talk about superstars. That's all I'm saying. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.